welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 134 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 60 of A Clash of Kings, that's Sansa 6.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We will summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll have some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing just fine. Happy St. Paddy's Day to you, my friend.
Oh, it is, yes. I see you're wearing green.
I am. It's got a very faded four-leaf clover on there.
Oh yeah.
Probably can't make that out very well. It's
on my
years
phone,
old.
It's too faded, yes.
Can I just say before we get started, can we just rehash the email conversation we had at work this past week?
So it's not. I didn't think it was that funny. I actually felt bad about what I said. So you sent me an email.
Yes.
I ignored it because I'm busy at work. You sent me a follow-up email the next day, actually. You were looking for an answer. You sent me a follow-up email, and I read that one. It said, do you have any thoughts on this? So I then read the first email, and I then responded to you, and I said, I saw the email was from you, and I just assumed you'd be wasting my time, so I didn't read it. I mean...
I laughed so hard about that.
To me, that doesn't paint me in a very good picture. I'm glad you laughed. I told Carson you laughed a lot at it, and I was like, I felt bad for saying it.
It's the brutal truth. That is the funny part.
It was a perfectly legitimate question, but I just didn't bother to read it because I was like, oh, Mackelly.
This has got to be a waste of time. I hate to admit that you're probably not the only person in my life that feels that way when they get a correspondence from me in any variety.
But in my defense, I get more waste of time emails from you than most of the people who are ignoring you otherwise. They should be paying attention to you. You're actually working with them.
Good stuff.
I should say, our work lives don't intersect that much. I mean, they intersect, but not that much. It is kind of unusual for you and I to have a work conversation.
That's true. It happens. You're right. It doesn't happen a great deal these days, anyway.
And to be clear to our listeners, I don't think of Ghosts of Harrenhal as a waste of time. It's just when I'm at work, I'm kind of busy, and so I put even things from Mackelly just get pushed to the back. But it was work, and I do apologise for ignoring you, for screening your calls.
So you sound a little under the weather, possibly.
I am under the weather, yes. So the schools have stopped mandating wearing masks, and within 2 days, Lucas came home with a cold. And we gave him a COVID test, and he was negative, so it's just a cold. But he's 18 now, so it's a man cold. It can really...
Right.
Can be quite debilitating. But so he's doing all this histrionic sort of coughing and nose blowing all the time. And I am treating him like a leper. I am keeping him at arm's length because I don't want any of this. And then the other morning I get up and I notice that my toothbrush is not where I left it. And so later that day I checked with him. I said, Lucas, what colour is your toothbrush? And he said, orange. I was like, no, that's my toothbrush.
Oh,
the whole time he'd been using my toothbrush.
Meanwhile, you're treating him like he's...
whilst sticking his toothbrush in my mouth. Which is both revolting and a guaranteed way to catch a cold.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. So you're like staying across the room from him.
I know.
Meanwhile, you guys are sharing an object that you insert into your mouths.
So yes, so all the lack of sympathy I showed him over his cold is now coming back to haunt me because I'm getting no kindness. So my other bit of news is, so I think I know I've told you, but I think we recorded it on the podcast, that my little sister keeps popping up on soccer. Me and my brother watch my soccer team on a live feed, and we keep seeing my sister at every game because she keeps going to every game. Well, she went and she took a new step. So the previous time, she was just, that's right, she was just giving the referee and the goalkeeper an earful.
Yes.
This time, a player for the other team got fouled right in front of her. And my sister just, she loves to go to soccer and she loves to shout at people. So this is...
it's a good frustration release for her.
Oh, yeah. She is pointing, she's effing and jeffing. And she's on the side where the substitutes warm up. So the other team's substitutes were warming up in front of her. And she gets into it with one of these players.
You're watching this?
I'm watching this, and she's like, they're mouthing back and forth, and he goes back to the dugout to sit, presumably to cry and consider his life options. But then the referee goes to the dugout and starts telling this player off for getting involved with the fans. And then a police presence starts forming behind my sister, like they're going to drag her out of it. Me and my brother are cracking up.
You're watching this live. Like, you're watching this unfold.
We're texting her. We're like, there are cops behind you now. Shush.
Oh, that's got to be more entertaining than the actual game.
She, because it was along the sideline from her, she couldn't tell who the ref was telling off. We were like, oh no, it's the guy. It's the guy you were talking to.
You've got the right guy.
So we keep thinking her involvement in these games keeps amping up. We expect by the end of the season she'll be scoring the winner,
That's good.
We have laughed about that.
Yes, I'm sure.
All right, we should get down to business.
Yes, we should.
How do we leave Ms. Sansa Stark? Last time we saw Sansa, which was only 3 chapters ago, it really varies what you get from Sansa. I think we had a 20-chapter break without her, and then it went down to 6, and now it's just 3. She was wandering.
Maybe next will be back-to-back.
It could be. She was wandering the Red Keep as the battle geared up, and she was wishing Tyrion and Joffrey luck, more or less sincerely.
Right.
She was praying to the gods, and then shooting the breeze with Cersei, while being watched over by Ser Ilyn Payne. Mackelly, why don't we give them the summary of this one?
All right. While the battle rages beyond the city walls, Sansa dines with the women and children in Maegor's Holdfast. On the surface, the atmosphere is festive, with a great feast, singing, and comedy from the fools. But underneath, there's a darkness created by fear over the battle. As Sansa's seated next to Queen Cersei, she gets the inside scoop on the tidings from the front lines via 2 of the 3 Kettleblack brothers.
The reports take them through the opposing fleets meeting in battle, the wildfire setting the river aflame, King Joffrey playing with the Antlermen, and Tyrion leading the sortie to clear the enemy from the King's Gate. They also hear of unrest from within the city, break-ins, servants attempting to flee, and wealthy merchants at the castle gate looking for refuge.
Cersei is in full defense mode. Her orders in response: shoo away the merchants at the gate. If they won't leave, kill a few with some crossbow bolts. But the gates stay locked. Send Ser Ilyn to remove the heads of the traitorous servants and mount those heads as a warning. The news of Tyrion leading the sortie certainly doesn't lift her spirits any. When news of the Mudgate also being under attack reaches her, she commands that Joff be brought back inside Maegor's Holdfast.
All the while, the Queen is getting more and more inebriated. She takes to explaining her theories on life as a highborn woman to Sansa. In her eyes, a woman's most powerful weapons are tears and sexuality, as opposed to a man's sword. She goes on to explain how much she hates this flock of frightened hens she's stuck with in this room. They're only here because their men are important for one reason or another. They themselves are useless.
Sansa asks what Cersei will do if the castle falls. If she's not betrayed by her own sellsword guard, and Maegor's Holdfast holds out, she'll yield to Stannis in person. But if the castle should fall before Stannis arrives, the women within are in for a rough time. Cersei would love to pick up a sword and fight, but that's not her lot in life. She's reminded of when she and Jaime were little and nearly indistinguishable. Despite their physical similarities, their treatment was a world apart. Jaime was taught to fight with sword and lance, whereas Cersei learned to smile, sing, and please. As an adult, little has changed. Despite her power as Queen Regent, she's helpless in the battle as every other woman in King's Landing.
Cersei then accuses Sansa of committing treason in the godswood. It's all Sansa can do to not glance over at Ser Dontos, who's one of the fools who's entertaining them. But it's not what Sansa feared. The Queen means that she prays to the old gods for a Lannister defeat. Sansa denies, but Cersei's not fooled. Cersei, well, I suppose on some level she is fooled. She's fooled about what was going on in the godswood, but not about...
not about the praying part.
Right. Cersei asks Sansa if she wants to know why Ser Ilyn is truly in the room. She calls the headsman over to explain himself, but all that comes from his mouth is a choking rattle. So the Queen translates, "He's here for us." She does not mean for Stannis to take her alive, nor does she plan for Sansa to survive. The Starks will have no joy from the fall of House Lannister. Well, they will have tears, is what she means. I mean, I think they'll still get some joy from the fall of House Lannister, even if Sansa goes too, you know.
Right. Bittersweet.
They've lost Sansa already on many levels, you know. So
right.
Not getting her back would be tragic, but you know.
There'll still be some joy, though.
Yes, I will say, I think of all the chapters we've done, this is George Martin throwing down the gauntlet to us to come up with a lot to talk about in this chapter, because it is short and nothing happens. It's a recap of what we already knew. You know?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's basically a secondhand battle report of the battles we've already seen. You know,
right.
Pretty much the last 3 chapters actually have been retelling the same events from different perspectives. Not only from both sides, we've got Davos on one side and Tyrion on the other, but then we have this semi-neutral Sansa kind of, you know, here as well. And so, but there's also you can also get it from the perspective of like the commander, Tyrion. You know, he's kind of in charge of the larger landscape of the Lannister side of the war. You get it from the soldier, Davos, and now we get it from Sansa, the bystander. Or I don't know if you call her a bystander or not, but she's not exactly able to do a whole lot to help the cause of the war effort here. We actually had a discussion on the Discord server this past week, because the episode that came out this week that we recorded last week is the Tyrion POV. And we were discussing which was the preferred POV during this battle, Tyrion or Davos. And primarily people were choosing Tyrion, and to sum it up, mostly due to his mobility and decision-making power, giving him more impact on the story.
Also his vantage point from atop the Merlin, atop the battlements.
That's right.
Atop the box, atop the Merlin, on the battlements.
Yes, exactly. Davos was pretty much along for the ride, and observing firsthand, but he wasn't there was very little he could do to affect the outcome of that battle there. Although he is a very relatable character.
Yeah.
But you know, here we get a third POV option. Sansa neither impacts the outcome aside from possibly the power of prayer, nor is she even witnessing it. So
hey, you know, if we're going to believe in magic, we're going to believe in the power of prayer. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. Hey.
If you pray to R'hllor correctly, all kinds of things happen. You know?
Yes. She could be birthing a shadow assassin herself.
Exactly. Well, I will say, I actually think the Sansa chapters are partly here just for Cersei's mindset, because it's kind of like, you know, Sansa is just a sort of vessel for hearing the things she hears, and the summary of the battle we already knew. We didn't really need that. So all we're really getting is Cersei's sort of inner turmoil over this, and she's clearly freaked out by the whole thing.
Yes, very much. In fact, as you say that, it's probably the closest thing that we've gotten by far of an actual POV chapter of Cersei.
Yeah. Which of course she's under terrific duress. I mean, it may be if we had POV chapters of Cersei, all we'd get is her sort of regal calm and, you know, sailing through all the troubles. But this particular one, she's drinking and scared.
Right. Yes, it might not be her normal mindset today, I guess.
Yeah.
She's getting Cersei, and Sansa through Cersei is getting regular updates on the state of the battle through two of the Kettleblack brothers, Osney and Osfryd. And Sansa mentions, she notices that Osney has four thin scratches on his cheek. And those scratches are the ones that Alayaya gave him when they took her from Chataya's brothel.
I saw that in the notes, and I was like, what does that mean? Why is he talking about this?
I only brought it up because Sansa pointed it out. So if anybody was wondering, why is she pointing out that he's got four thin scratches on his face? That's why.
So the city, law and order is breaking down in the city. Drunkards are smashing doors, climbing through windows. The gold cloaks, of course, are occupied in defence of the city. So the breaking and entering and general looting has broken out. I will say, given the general state of the city, I can't imagine there's an awful lot to be gained from this. I mean,
right.
There's people.
Not many people have many things.
all their worldly goods for food at this point. So
right. Yeah, certainly not great timing for such looting, but I guess, when the cats are away, the mice will play.
I will say the nature of looting is that this is a great time for looting. In fact, it's the only time really you would loot.
True.
While everything's, on a pleasant Sunday afternoon, that's not the time to go looting.
Not the time. Yes, good point.
So, within the hall where Cersei and Sansa are, the young bride of one of Sir Lancel's knights is weeping, and probably annoying. I mean, it's a sort of strange scene of sort of like the food and the sort of like the entertainment that's being laid on, sort of juxtaposed against the way that some of the women are behaving. I mean, some are enjoying themselves, but those who've got husbands fighting and or are similar in mindset to Cersei about what's about to happen,
right?
Finding it hard to get distracted,
right? And so we had talked last chapter about what Sir Lancel was up to, and it seems that he's leading men in some capacity here. And so back in, I think it was Tyrion 10, when he told Tyrion about Lord Giles Rosby sneaking Tommen back to Rosby.
Yeah.
When he told him that, he mentioned that he had asked for his own command in this battle, kind of as a, hey, I'm giving you all this information. I would like in return to be given a command in this battle. So it seems like he was granted that.
Right. I would grant Lancel that kind of wish.
Right. You got a death wish? All right. Yeah,
sure. Knock yourself out.
Although he's kind of useful, though. He's useful to
True.
Tyrion alive, getting this info from Cersei.
Given all of Tyrion's manoeuvring, he doesn't need him anymore. He's got the Kettleblacks, I mean, he's...
True, yeah.
So Cersei says that she would sooner face any number of swords than sit helpless like this, pretending to enjoy the company of this flock of frightened hens. And I think that goes to her problem here. It's not just that she's scared, not just that she's drunk. She is a woman of power, influence, and action. And she wants to be doing something. She wants to, she's itching to have a sword in her hand. She's never been trained for it. She wouldn't actually be much use at it. But given that she is that kind of alpha personality, to sit and wait for others to determine her fate must be terribly frustrating.
Absolutely, yeah. You could see in this chapter, especially, you can see how aware and angry she is about the roles of men and women here in their society. And later in this chapter, she tells of this story of, like we mentioned in the summary, of how she and Jaime are so alike, but yet treated so differently that, basically, despite being two halves of the same person, they were treated just like night and day here.
Yeah, apart from by Tywin, apparently, who couldn't tell them apart. He was often giving her a sword by mistake.
But she seems to hold the women as responsible for it as the men. She has this line in this chapter. She says, tears are a woman's weapon. My lady mother used to call them. A man's weapon is a sword, and that tells us all you need to know, doesn't it? So, it feels like she's blaming her mother almost as much as her father for allowing her to be raised with nothing but her tears and her feminine wiles as a weapon.
Yeah, it is an interesting philosophical point because there is definitely blame being given to the women for the way they behave, whilst simultaneously she recognises the fact that it's the patriarchal society that's confined them like this. So
Right.
The question is if you ask Cersei a direct question, do women have the same capabilities as men? It's not clear what she would say. I mean,
Yes.
she sees herself as the equal of any man, and she is. Yeah, but then she looks around her and sees these crying women, and she's like, "Well, they're pathetic," But she's in the same room as them because of what society has dictated she can do.
Yes,
and maybe they are too. Maybe that's the reason they're there. If society wasn't like that, maybe they'd be out there fighting, and maybe they're crying out of frustration, not out of fear, just in the same way she is.
Certainly, Brienne of Tarth has proved that women are capable fighters.
Right.
But in this chapter, Cersei almost comes off as both a man-hater and a woman-hater, but for their opposite roles and the same restraints that hold her back from being who she feels she could be if just given the opportunity to do so. She mentions that Jaime was heir to Casterly Rock, and she was to be sold like to some stranger like a horse. So,
yeah.
But thinking about that, knowing that she thinks that way, it must have made it all the harder to send Myrcella away like she did to be betrothed to Trystane Martell.
Oh yeah, that's a layer of that I hadn't thought of. I thought her anger there was just like not being able to see her child anymore and Tyrion getting his way, but perhaps that the fact that her daughters now suffered the same fate she did.
Right. As she's watching her sail away, she probably has visions of her betrothal to Robert running through her head and how disastrously that's gone.
Yeah, she seems afraid that the women in the room with her might be a reflection of what she is and how she's seen by others, which is
right. Yes.
Which is, she says, of themselves the hens are nothing, but their cocks are important for one reason or another. That's the reason. The only reason they're in that room. The only reason they're not outside the walls with the people trying to get in is because of who they're married to. They are themselves nothing. But and that, you see, there's a couple of layers of that. I mean, not only is she sort of like blaming them for the same patriarchal, blaming them for being pathetic in the patriarchal system that made them pathetic, but she's also terrified that it makes others see her that way, which sort of goes to, and we've talked before about how she doesn't care about PR. I mean, she does heinous things all the time and doesn't care what people think. But on this, she cares what people think,
Yes, right. As we're talking about it, on one hand, you'd think maybe she'd be the perfect champion for women's rights in Westeros. She's the Queen Regent of the Seven Kingdoms, but you don't see her doing a lot to raise other women up. Yeah. She just wants the rights for herself. She wants to be treated like a man. Like she told Robert in that chapter where after Ned woke up from his coma when he broke his leg, maybe you should wear the skirt and me the armor. So, she wants to be treated like a man. I'm tough like a man, but you don't see her doing much to make any kind of change on the grander scale for women.
Not to get too political, and this will sort of shade into too political perhaps, but a real life similarity there might be with Margaret Thatcher, because Margaret Thatcher, you'd think Britain's first female prime minister, would be a great moment in sort of women's, liberation and women's rights, but she did very little. She herself, her entire cabinet was male. Everyone she surrounded herself was male. She did not help any women sort of move up the ladder. Didn't enact any laws to help women or anything like that. So I can sort of see a parallel there with Cersei, of like, I've achieved what I've achieved. You all can take care of yourselves, But Cersei has achieved what she's achieved despite the patriarchal society. And what she's achieved is exactly what she was born to be married off to someone, and to give birth to the next king, But but not caring about the other women is kind of like a similarity. I mean, I'm sure people have different views on Margaret Thatcher, but I can see parallels there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So Sansa asks, and if the castle should fall, and Cersei says, "You would like that, wouldn't you?" So
I think, given how drunk Cersei's become, I think Sansa should really sort of go for this. She'd be like,
"Oh yeah, I've been praying for that." But
not with Sedontus, just on my own.
Just on my own. But again, like you just said, who knows how much of what Cersei's saying has to do with how heavily she's drinking here in this chapter. So some of the things kind of contradict one another, because Cersei knows how Sansa's been treated. She watched Joff. She was there while Sansa watched Joff behead her father. Yeah. And just like Tyrion in the last Sansa chapter, they're both aware that Sansa's likely rooting for a Lannister defeat. Yeah. But at the end of the chapter, Cersei accuses Sansa of treason for praying for a Lannister defeat. And Sansa says, "I pray for Joffrey." And Cersei says, "Why? 'Cause he treats you so sweetly?" So she is fully aware of the mistreatment that Joffrey gives to Sansa. So how could she possibly blame her for rooting against Joffrey and his family?
Yeah, it feels like, as treasons go, hoping your tormentors go away is not that big of a treason, really.
Yes, she's...
And totally forgivable, too. You know, I mean, like, you wouldn't even hold it against her. You'd be like, yeah, you're a young girl being terrorized. I understand you want that to stop. And
I think Tyrion basically was saying that in the last chapter when he said, "I'm not going to ask who you're praying for." But Cersei here spells it out. There's no way that you're praying for anything positive for Joffrey, because I know he treats you terribly.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
So, on the subject of the city falling, Cersei says that if she's not betrayed by her own guard, that maybe she can hold out here in the Red Keep. The Red Keep and Maegor's Holdfast. Tell me the difference and similarity.
Maegor's Red Keep is the larger castle. Maegor's Holdfast is the castle within the castle.
And then from there she could yield to Stannis. If the Holdfast falls before Stannis comes up there, then they're in for some rape, torture, and murder. So she's probably right. I mean, this seems to be the way wars are fought here, that the men, once they win, they sort of, get to the raping. Right. She's hoping that if they can retreat and Stannis comes to the walls, then she can give herself up and receive better treatment.
Right.
Although ultimately not necessarily a different outcome.
Yes, if Stannis wins, I don't think there's a rosy outcome for her, right, regardless of how it goes down. Yes. But the guard loyalty is kind of an important point here because, like Sansa mentioned or observed, and I believe Cersei commented on last Sansa chapter, so many of the current gold cloaks and the new Lannister guard are sellswords that would fall into Tyrion's if they break, they'll break bad mantra that he kept repeating to himself that Lord Jocelyn Bywater told him. Yep. So, even her captain of the Lannister Guard, her new captain, which is Osfryd Kettleblack, is supposedly in Tyrion's pocket. So,
yeah, but of course, I mean, their loyalty to Tyrion in this situation transposes to loyalty to Cersei. I mean, they're going to protect Cersei. It's not right. Like Tyrion's going to betray her. Are they holed up in Maegor's Holdfast now?
Yes.
Oh, they are. They're already inside Maegor. It's not like they're planning a retreat themselves. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. But then it's already sealed up. I mean, it feels like to me you could hold out. It's the only reason that they wouldn't hold out and that they would turn is if they came to the gates and threatened them. If you don't open the gates now, we're going to kill everybody inside.
And then the sellswords might be like, okay.
Yes, but on the flip side, they might be like, no, we're going to hold out and see how that goes.
Right. Yeah. You'd have to... they don't know Stannis from a hill of beans, likely. These are just sellswords. But us knowing Stannis, he seems like he would want as little discord as possible when he comes into the city. So if there are Lannister guards that are willing to throw down their swords when he gets there, he will forgive them. He will let them pass in peace or come to his side or whatever.
Right.
But she also suggests, like you said there, she suggests yielding to Stannis. But then later at the end of the chapter, she reveals that Stannis won't take her alive. So, I'm unsure of whether all these things she was saying when Cersei told Sansa, work on those tears of yours there, you're going to need them for Lord Stannis, and things like this, like I could turn myself over, yield to Stannis, and get us all a lighter sentence. And then at the end of the chapter, she's like, "Oh, actually, I'm planning on killing both of us before he ever gets here." So I don't know if she's just up to that point, she's trying to sugarcoat it a little bit for Sansa, and at the end, she's like, "You know what? I've been lying to you the whole time. I'm going to have us both killed." Or if she's just inebriated and kind of
I think there's
back and forth.
There's definitely a little bit of the inebriation talking, but because I still think there's a possibility that she has Ilyn Payne there in case the barbarians come to the door. If the barbarians come to the door, then maybe Ilyn Payne is the better option. But if Stannis comes to the door and says, yield now and I'll show mercy, I choose that. I don't know what his mercy will look like, but I choose that over Ser Ilyn Payne.
Yes, and I think that's probably true. The only line that makes me question whether she'd do that or not is when she says, he might take the castle, but I won't have him judge me.
Yeah. Okay, so that was me being me, not me being Cersei, unfortunately. You could judge me, just don't chop my head off.
Right. Send me to the wall.
The other advantage that Ilyn Payne gives her, of course, is that she can take Sansa with her.
Right.
And I can certainly see Cersei being sort of like having that scorched earth idea in her head. Like, if I go down, I'm going to take Sansa with me and make more trouble for the kingdom.
Yep, I had that same thought.
But you could do that without then following in her footsteps. You're like, all right, chop her head off. I yield.
Sansa goes first.
Now I've seen it. It looked terrible. I'll yield.
When she sees all the blood.
Yeah. Oh, heck no.
I'll take my chances with seducing Stannis or his horse. So she goes on, Cersei, she's really on a roll here, and she goes on to talk about how so she tells Sansa that, if the Maegor's Holdfast falls, we're probably in for rape, torture, murder, and then Sansa is kind of shocked because she's young and still quite naive, and she's like, but we are all women and children gently born. And Cersei says, birth protects highborn women some, but soldiers want flesh more than coin after a battle. But still, the golden shield is better than what women outside the castle face.
Yeah, at this point she mentions that pretty things like the serving wench of Lady Tanders is in for a lively night. And that's Shae she's referring to.
Right.
And I noticed that you put in the notes, it was oddly out of character for Cersei to even notice a servant.
Right.
I put it down to the fact that Shae is very striking,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Good point. She could be striking to the point that even Cersei would notice her as a serving wench or whatever she calls
I mean, there's
her.
like 100 women in this room. You know, you're going to see all their faces, even the ones who are just handmaidens. You know, you might be like, oh,
Right.
that was a pretty one.
Right.
Pity. She's in for a bad night. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, again, that also goes to the whole, you know, she just doesn't care about these women. She seems to care about the position of women in society, but not the position of the women.
Right. That's a good way to put it. Yes. Yes, well put. That's what I've been trying to figure out how to say. Yes, that's exactly right. She also says that if it were anyone else coming to the city, any other leader, any other man leading an army into King's Landing, she might hope to beguile him. But as this is Stannis Baratheon, she has a better chance of seducing his horse. And Sansa is apparently shocked because Cersei says, "Oh, don't look so naive, Sansa. Tears aren't a woman's only weapon." And I mean, yes, I believe she is correct about Stannis. He is not the man for that.
No, he's not going to be seduced by Cersei, but he might.
Right.
He might show her some mercy. You know.
Maybe she did trick his brother into believing that those 3 children were his, and try to cut him out of his crown. So,
right,
she might not have a ton of. He might not have a ton of empathy for her.
Okay, you're right. I'm just going to take the opposite position just for the sake of discussion. If she would come out and say, "I admit it, the 3 children are Jaime Lannister's. I'm sorry I did this. Please forgive me," he might let her go back to Castle Rock and take the 3 children with him. I mean, like, if you say that publicly so everyone knows it, so those children have zero claim to the throne, they could all live. They could all go off and live happily ever after. But if you don't say that publicly, then there'll always be a chance that they were the legitimate royal family.
Yes,
I don't
if you
think
don't
it's likely
come out
either.
and publicly say that. Right. I just wonder if Stannis would really consider sparing them even after that.
Yeah. But he wasn't that fond of Robert, so it's not like, I mean, some brothers would have want revenge on her.
True.
Stannis never cared about Robert.
But yeah, everything Cersei says is true about what might happen if Maegor's Holdfast falls. Maybe she's playing it up a little bit, knowing that Sansa is likely praying for a Stannis victory.
Right, yeah. Yeah, but
they're certainly in a lot of danger.
They are, but no more danger than anybody else in the city, really.
True. Yeah. In fact, being that they're 2 incredibly highborn ladies, they're probably more protected than anyone else in the city.
Right.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
In fact, Sansa's only real danger is from Cersei.
And Ser Ilyn.
Yes, exactly. So Sansa notices that the Kettleblacks are popular with the people, and that makes her wonder why she'd never heard of them until Sir Osmond was named to the Kingsguard. And that is a very interesting and perceptive observation.
It surely is.
Because typically the Kingsguard are, they're famous knights.
Right.
Renowned
they don't
throughout the
seem
land.
to come from a lofty house.
Yeah.
She's not heard of the Kettleblack house before.
Yeah.
So, and that's usually often something that's considered when, we're talking about spots on the Kingsguard.
Right.
So it does make you wonder if Cersei's ever stopped to wonder about them.
But you see, here's the thing I think about that. I think that for Cersei, that kind of low-bornness, works in her favour. She's elevating them above what they should have realistically expected. It's the same with, what was the former leader of the Gold Cloaks?
Jaina Slint.
Same thing, you see. She elevated him so far above his station that he was completely loyal to her. He hadn't. And I think that's the same thing with the Kettleblacks.
Yeah, that's a good point. I keep sliding all around on your desk.
It's because someone from work keeps pinging me, and it makes my phone vibrate, and my phone slides.
Go on D&D, or just ignore them like it's one of my emails. So, Cersei's told of the whole wildfire success. Things are looking really bleak here, and then she gets this good news that the wildfire plot worked. The whole Blackwater Rush is aflame, and there's hundreds of ships on fire, but it barely registers with her. Her response to the first 2 bits of news that she gets, which is the fleets are battling, and then this wildfire success, her only response is, "And my son?"
Right.
And surely you could attribute some of that to a mother's love. But
let's hope so.
We also have to remember that she thinks Tyrion is trying to get Joffrey killed. And
yes.
And also, Tyrion also said the last time that the two of them, at least we saw the two of them sit at dinner together, that he'd do terrible things to Tommen if anything happened to Alyaya. So, surely she's on edge about the fate of her firstborn son here. And it seems to be really all that she's concerned about at the moment.
Yeah, honestly, the more I think about it, the more I think she isn't really afraid of Tyrion plotting against Joffrey. Joffrey's just out there in a battle in which thousands are going to die. He could be one of them, She's just worried about him.
You think?
Yeah, and to a certain extent, it is slightly strange because, of course, she's getting news of the battle so that she knows how much she should be worried. And the news is fairly good, like you say. But once the news comes in, whenever a messenger walks through the door, the first thought is he bringing me news about my son? And that's kind of short-circuiting the brain about, sort of strategically how's it going.
Yeah, that's a good point. As a parent, that would be your primary concern, I guess. But she does get some news that is disconcerting to her. She finds out that the Mudgate is under attack. And first of all, that's the second most logical gate to be under attack. The King's Gate was under attack. Ships had landed men on the tourney grounds, and so that's the King's Gate is right there. The Mudgate faces out toward the harbor, so that would be the second most logical place.
It's the Mudgate is just a colloquial name for it, right? It's actually the River Gate.
Yes, right.
Yeah, it's the River Gate.
Right. And that's basically the news of the Mudgate being under attack is pretty much the only new development we get about this battle.
Right. But even that's barely a development because we knew that's where they were landing, right in front of the Mudgate. So of course the Mudgate was under. They weren't just sunning themselves on the beach.
Right. And Tyrion, in the last Tyrion chapter, he told Jacelyn Bywater, he had a runner go tell him, to sortie out and remove those ships that he could see had just landed by the harbor because he saw shapes moving among the wharfs or something like that. And he wanted to attack them before they got their land legs while they were still...
You see, I don't know. Strategically, I still think your advantage when you're holding a castle is being inside the castle. And going out the doors of the castle is imprudent. Stay where you are and just rain arrows down on them. Rain arrows down on them, rain barrels of pitch down on them.
Right.
Don't ever open the doors, because you open the doors, someone might get their foot in there.
That's true. That could be a consequence of opening a door.
Exactly. Now you've got 20-foot walls with a hole in them.
Yes. All of that news about the Mudgate, aka River Gate, causes her to want to overrule Tyrion to have Joffrey pulled back into Maegor's Holdfast, because we know Joffrey, as she knows Joffrey, is at the trebuchets launching Antlermen into the river, possibly over the river, depending on who you're betting on. Yes. And, that's a risky move, because we and she know that many of these gold cloaks are sellswords, and they see the king being whisked away to safety. It might spook them a bit.
Yes, they're not getting updated on how the battle's going, but they see the king running for the hills.
Right.
That's a pretty good sign of how the battle's going.
Yes, it's a risky move right there, and I think that was why Tyrion wanted him to stay out there, and why Osmond tries to argue with him. Or it's Osfryd. Osmond's with him, actually. It's Osfryd that tries to argue with her, and she says, "I don't care. You only listen to what I say." Yeah. But she gets an update about Joffrey out by the out on the walls earlier in the chapter, and the update she gets is that Joffrey spoke to the archers and gave them some tips on handling the crossbow. And I thought, no wonder so many of Stannis' men got to the gates so quickly.
To be fair, he can shoot a cat. Remember, he shot cats. I mean,
he did, but it took him how many different...
True. Yes, he wasn't very good at it. That's right.
Right.
So Cersei has the grooms and maidservants who were stealing horses. Is that what they were stealing?
Yeah, they were trying to take horses and flee, I think. She
has them beheaded by Ser Ilyn, so Ser Ilyn gets a little break from the action to go and behead some people. And she tells Sansa that the only way to keep loyalty amongst the people is they fear you more than they fear the enemy. Sansa won't be the same kind of queen, I feel.
Yes, she thinks that too. She thinks that she plans to make people love her if and when she's queen. And, she was raised in Winterfell with Ned Stark as the benevolent overlord.
Yes.
And you can't imagine Ned having loyalty issues with his household staff.
True. Good point.
Because they love him, not because they fear him.
True. But she will be, if she is ever queen, she will be Joffrey Baratheon's queen. And she might begin to realise how much the people hate her. the servants.
By association.
Exactly. If I would, day one, I would say to the servants, will you just spit in his food, not the food?
Not the, his.
So, so there is one man present, actually. Ser Ilyn Payne is present, but there's also Giles Rosby's here. I'd forgotten that he was amongst them. But he's passed out drunk in his food, and Cersei's disgusted. And I think her disgust goes to this feeling of she should be out there fighting. She's like, he should definitely be out there fighting, not getting drunk in here.
Yeah, I think she says something like, the gods wasted manhood on that one.
Right.
Something like that. And then she says, I must have been crazy to demand his release.
Right.
And
just one more mouth to feed.
What she's referring to is when Tyrion took him captive, when Jacelyn Bywater took Tommen off him and Sir Boris Blunt, and then Tyrion thinks to himself, that we get to hear during his chapter, that he held on to Lord Rosby simply so that he could offer to free him as a bargaining chip with Cersei.
Right.
So she's thinking, what did I bother making that deal for?
If she thought that through, she would have recognized that wasn't much of a bargaining chip that Tyrion was holding, and he'd be left holding him. So there are rich merchants and noblemen sort of at the gate looking for refuge. Cersei says send them away and kill some of them if needed. So the way Joffrey treats the small folk is not purely an invention of the child. Some of it, the apple didn't fall that far from the tree.
Yes, and considering what we've seen Gregor, Clegane, the Hound's older brother, do on behalf of Cersei's father Tywin, likely Cersei got this point of view on treating the small folk from her father. So
then the one true action moment of the whole chapter is when Cersei says, I know all about your treasons in the godswood, which of course is a heart-stopping moment for the reader and Sansa.
I'm sure it was.
Because that is exactly what she was doing in the godswood. But Cersei she's not even on a fishing expedition. She's just accidentally dropping a fishing line into the pond here because Sansa almost gives herself up. She's almost like, really? You saw me, Sedantus? It'd be funny if she could be think on her feet and she's like, you know about me and Tyrion plotting against you? I knew it!
Yeah, and, yes, it must be an incredibly heart-stopping moment because she just saw how Cersei dealt with traitors. Just 3 people trying to steal a horse,
not the kingdom.
Yes. and like in the next few minutes, Ser Ilyn's going to come over, his sword, ice, still dripping wet with the blood of the traitors that he just beheaded.
I know he's used it a lot more than anybody else in these books, but I'm not ready to call it his sword yet. Okay,
true, it's not. I agree. It's not his sword. But she thinks to herself, no, this can't be. My Florian would never fail me. And I thought, has she met Ser Dantos?
Yeah.
Does he seem like the never fail me type?
If that's what Sansa should say in her defense, my Florian will never fail me. That would clear Sedantus straight away. Yes. No one would be looking at him.
Yeah, it probably did wake her up a bit to realize that this Florian Jonquil game that they're playing does have real stakes. Like this isn't a fantasy story here.
Yeah, which is why I got so annoyed in the last chapter when they were in the Godswood, because they were just doing nothing. They're just meeting up and wasting time and bringing suspicion on themselves.
Right. Yeah. You knew what the consequences were.
Right. So Ilyn Payne is there for us, the us being Cersei and Sansa.
And Sansa goes, us? Us? What? Which, of course, we surmised last Sansa chapter. Yeah. Or possibly we already knew, but...
With me, it's always surmise, just FYI.
But, so let's think about this plan for a second here. So she's just gonna... Cersei, when I say she, I mean Cersei, is just gonna kill herself and then leave Joff to his fate?
Well, he'll be in there with her by that time, I would imagine.
I guess. So you think that he is part of the us?
Yes.
Going to take all 3 of us out here.
Right. Again, I would draw lots for who goes first.
Right. Yeah, but the chapter ends with the line, the Starks will have no joy from the fall of House Lannister, which is how we opened our discussion here. And like you said, I think that fits with what we know about Cersei.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that she would try to pull this down with her. In fact, if she gave herself up to Stannis, it might be to stab Stannis and then get killed.
Right. Yes.
So no more Baratheons, no more Lannisters. Oh, and I'll take out Sansa while I'm at it. So do you have some background for us?
I managed to cobble together a little.
I knew you would.
Like you said. Thanks to George Martin throwing down the gauntlet of go ahead, try and make an episode out of this chapter. I managed to find something, I think. So I think we were talking about it earlier that Sansa's heard around the castle that we weren't talking about this earlier. But Sansa has heard around the castle that Sir Osmond Kettleblack is as big and strong as the Hound, but faster and younger, and so has replaced him as the king's personal protector. Now, this part we had talked about earlier. Sansa wonders why it is that if he is such a wonderful warrior, she's never heard of him or his brothers before Osmond had been named to the Kingsguard. Well, he'd not be the first knight to join the Kingsguard with little to no reputation preceding him. In fact, the initial iteration of King Jaehaerys I's Kingsguard had several of such members. After the misunderstood end of his uncle King Maegor's reign, he was faced with a Kingsguard shortage. His uncle's 5 remaining Kingsguard were offered to take the Black, and 4 of them did. 1 died in a trial by combat. So young King Jaehaerys had basically to start from scratch. he nabbed Sir Giles Morgan as his Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, and to make peace with the faith of the Seven, he offered a white cloak to Sir Joffrey Doggett of the Warrior's Sons. That left the king with 5 empty slots. It was decided that the spots would be filled through a test of arms dubbed the War for the White Cloaks. Hundreds of knights competed, but in the end 5 were left standing. The youngest of the 5 was known as Pate the Woodcock, and he claimed to be a knight, but questions arose as to the validity of that claim. Sir Joffrey Doggett was so impressed by the young man's fighting skill that he himself officially knighted Pate, making him Sir Pate Woodcock of the Kingsguard.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly.
Comparison with the television show, this was more captured than I recalled, but hey, we all know about that. Cersei complains about her lot versus Jaime's. That part is pretty much verbatim. She talks to Shae and almost busts Shae. She almost figures out who she is. She engages her and Shae curtsies, and she does such a bad job of curtsying, and she picks up her accent. She says, "You're from Larath." Yeah, which is where Shae is supposedly from in the show.
Right.
So she said, "How long have you been in Westeros?" And she says, 10 years. She said, "So you've gone from being, new to Westeros 10 years ago to being a handmaiden in the Red Keep, and you haven't learned how to curtsy? Tell me your story." And it's at that point that the news of the battle comes in the door and saves Shae from having to explain it.
She would have been like,
yeah.
You see.
The news from the battle comes in courtesy of Lancel. He's being the runner. He takes the place of the Kettleblacks here.
Okay.
She orders Lancel to send Joffrey to his chambers. He says, "Here?" And she's like, "No, not here, scared with the women. To his chambers." Equally far from the battle, but not in amongst them.
Right.
The news of the battle is just too ominous for her, so she wants Joffrey out of the battle. Lancel does briefly try to object in the same way the Kettleblacks do, but she shouts him down, and Lancel scurries off to do her bidding. But yes, everything else is as it is. Ser Ilyn is brought forward and grins maniacally at the prospect of chopping their heads off.
Uh-huh.
So pedantry, you've got some pedantry.
I've got a little bit. I went back and forth about whether I considered it pedantry or not, but I thought I would bring it up. Why not? We can discuss it and see whether it is. So, toward the end of the chapter, after the food is done, many of the guests ask to leave to go to the Sept. Now, of course, we're talking the Royal Sept. Surely they're not going to the outside of the Red Keep to the Great Sept of Baelor. That would
through the throngs amassed at the door trying to get in. Yeah, not a good plan.
Yes. No, probably not. But still, the Royal Sept is outside of Maegor's Holdfast.
Right.
We know this because Sansa came from that Royal Sept and had to get across the drawbridge into the Holdfast.
Where Lollis wouldn't cross.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So isn't the whole point of this gathering to shelter in Maegor's Holdfast until the battle ends?
Right.
And they go scurrying off in all directions to pray and who knows what? So... Yeah. But then, within that pedantry... Oh, go on.
Well, there is a sort of like a succession of things, though. There's the city. The city walls could hold. If the city walls failed, then the Red Keep could hold. And if the Red Keep doesn't hold, Maegor's Holdfast could hold.
Yes.
So you would have time, perhaps, to go from...
Yes, that is why I debated whether or not to call this pedantry.
I'm with you, though. I'm with you. It's dubious. But I will allow it as pedantry. Well done.
All right. The other bit within this larger pedantry is the Stokeworths fled. Don't they recall the trouble getting lollies across the bridge the first time?
No, I missed that.
Do they want to do that again with Baratheon men at their backs?
God. That's why Shae's still there. She's like, "I'm not doing that." You're on your own.
You're on your own.
I'm mixing up TV show and book there. Just
right.
All right, news and notes. Come on, tell me what these news and notes are about.
News and notes. We've got a new book coming in 2022.
This year?
George Martin has announced that you will have a Song of Ice and Fire book in your hands by this October.
I take it all back, George. For all the things I said about you, I take it all back.
It is not Winds of Winter,
Oh,
unfortunately.
I untake it all back.
The book is called Rise of the Dragon. And in Martin's own words from his blog, the difference between it and A Fire and Blood is, think of the Rise of the Dragon as a deluxe reference, but you should see Simon's face. Think of the Rise of the Dragon as a deluxe reference book with 180 illustrations, new illustrations at that. And I will say, what he showed on his blog, I'm going to paste in here one of the picture of the American cover, because there's a different cover for the American book version and the UK book version. I'm going to paste it into the bottom page of our notes so you can see it.
This is podcast gold, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, everybody else can go to our bottom page. You can go to our Discord page. I posted it there as well. That's a pretty cool book cover, is it not? It's got this awesome Balerion looking dragon sticking through this fire. It looks pretty neat, actually. But
oh, I know who Elio Garcia and Linda Antonson are. They've been bugging me in videos for months. Aren't they the ones who pop up on a Wiki of Ice and Fire all the time?
Yes, they are. They run a Wiki of Ice and Fire.
So. Oh, they do? Oh, okay.
Yes. So I guess it makes sense that they pop up there. But yes, I'm glad you mentioned those two, because Martin goes on to say that this book, The Rise of the Dragon, covers the same time frame as Fire and Blood, but it'll be more... Simon's face is cracking me up. But it'll be more encyclopedic in nature than Fire and Blood.
That's what we needed.
He compares it to A World of Ice and Fire, which Elio and Linda were heavily involved in the creation of. And they joined Martin for this effort as well. So that's why you saw their names there on the cover.
Don't you feel like that? I mean, look, Elio and Linda seem like very nice people, and I don't mean to badmouth them, but aren't they traitors to the cause here?
They need to keep him on task.
Exactly! The last thing we need is anyone planting ideas in George Martin for something else to do. He'll do anything but write this book. He's drawn 180 pictures.
Maybe they're saying, hey, you focus on the writing. We'll focus on the Rise of the Dragon.
Maybe.
Anyway, so that's...
If they're pitching to him, I'm annoyed now.
Last week we had so much news and notes. This is all I've got for this week.
The only reason that we haven't had George Martin on here is because we don't want to waste his time.
Right.
Keeping it.
He keeps asking us to come on, and we keep saying, George, focus. You've got one task.
You can come on to announce the date of release.
Right.
Then you can come on our show. All right, let's draw a line under this one. So Cersei's still not full of confidence about success, but she is full of wine. No,
she is. And apparently, she is the kind of drunk that gets really worried about. She's a worried drunk. You know? She's not everything's gonna be all right kind of drunk.
So Sansa gets a mostly accurate third-hand summary of the battle, including a little bit of an update that the Mudgate is now under duress.
Yeah, and it's basically the third time we've heard these details of this battle.
Yeah.
There's really been no new development since Davos basically was telling us what he saw. And Tyrion, the only news that Tyrion added was that the King's Gate was under attack. And the only news we got this time is that the Mudgate is officially under attack, which we kind of guessed was happening because they had landed men on the wharfs in front of the Mudgate.
It would be a long run around the castle to find a different gate.
Right.
When there's one sitting right there.
Yes.
She gets some somewhat drunken lessons in responsibilities and duties of a queen from Cersei, which are not one she needs to remember for the long haul, I feel. Although recognising the strengths of a woman in this society probably will be useful to Sansa in some ways. But
she's You know, we really dig into Cersei's psyche in this chapter. We get some really good insight into what makes her tick and influences her to act and think the way she does, and possibly why she's such an angry, vengeful person. And like I said earlier, it's really the closest thing we've gotten to a Cersei POV chapter.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, as the always sober person in the room, the more people drink, the more their internal POV comes extra. Yes, exactly. So I can tell you that's pretty legit.
Yeah. But Cersei, true to herself, she can't give good advice without peppering it with horror stories to horrify and demoralize her listeners. So she gives Sansa plenty of those too.
Yes.
And Sodontus is not out fighting, he's here entertaining the ladies. That's good.
That's right. He's riding around on his wooden horse, chasing the ladies.
I'm not really sure how his plan to rescue Sansa is being aided and abetted by this, but they are in the same room, so...
Right. Maybe it'll lead to something that we haven't noticed yet. But, like you were saying at the beginning of the conclusion here, that Cersei's not really full of confidence about the Lannister success here. And, with most stories, you assume that these kind of primary characters are fairly safe. But the wisdom of killing off Eddard Ned Stark, the top POV character in a Game of Thrones, is that from then on, nobody's safe.
Right. Nobody's safe. Exactly. In fact, did you say... you said something at the beginning of that I wanted to comment on. Something like traditionally or normally or something like that. This book
most stories. Yeah.
The only counterexample. It's the only one ever where you've not thought the lead characters will get through this.
Right.
You just assume that they're all on death row, every one of them. So yes.
Yeah, doing that one move right there, killing off the primary character from that book.
Yeah.
Who's to say that we probably consider Tyrion the primary character from this book?
He's had the most chapters.
He's not going to die next chapter.
Danger. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Cersei, she's not even a POV character. She's barely wallpaper at this point.
She could easily be fodder.
Exactly. All right, there are 3 ways that you could help us. You could go out and leave us a review. There's no better advertising than that. Secondly, you could buy some merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com, or you can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can even become a sustainer there and join the others who've done so. Big thank you to those sustainers.
Absolutely. And I put out a few new designs on our Threadless shop.
That include the t-shirt you showed me?
It did. Stacey said nobody's going to buy that. Nobody's going to walk around wearing that shirt.
It's a tough sell, but it is really funny.
I made myself laugh, and I believe I made you laugh. So.
Oh, for sure. I'm going to get a copy of that t-shirt. It's awesome. But it is a tough sell because you wouldn't want to wear it to, like, Thanksgiving.
No, maybe. No. Well, maybe Thanksgiving, since it's all friends and family.
True. Not a job.
You wouldn't want to wear... Yes, or your first day at work at a new job.
Well, go to ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com to see the new t-shirt. You'll get a kick out of it.
And as always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at ghostharrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and please come join us in the discussion on Discord. We have so much fun there.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.